Good afternoon, everybody. I wish I was addressing you during happier times. I hope you're all keeping safe and well, and that your families are also in good health. Matthew Clements-Wheeler, as the chair, and I as the Institute of School Business Leadership CEO, would like to take this opportunity to address you all as school business professionals during this most challenging of times. Let me be absolutely clear about what I mean when I talk about school business professionals. I'm referring to finance officers, bursars, school business managers, estates managers, HR directors, directors of resources, FDs, CFOs, COOs, and indeed any other version of the role making a significant contribution to the management of school business operations. Look, you're all doing an incredible job and critical work supporting our education system. You're providing care for the children of key workers and keeping the most vulnerable children safe. At the same time, you're ensuring that systems and infrastructure are working and that financial governance continues without being compromised. Additionally, you're dealing with the deluge of information and guidance as we work our way through this pandemic. But it's so important that we work together as a professional community throughout this crisis. The role of the regional groups should not be underestimated, and the peer-to-peer support being offered locally is really quite extraordinary, something we couldn't hope to replicate from the centre. I'd also like to add to that the comfort that practitioners and the refuge that practitioners are finding with social media groups as well, and that's important, and particularly important when we all feel slightly isolated, and that sense of being able to connect and to continue dialogue is really critical at this point. But the choice should never really be about national membership or regional groups. Both are very essential, but in very different ways. I'd like to take this opportunity just to talk about how different things might look if there were no dedicated school business professional institute. So I'm just going to go through a few things that I think have been beneficial, not only for our members, but also for the wider school business leadership community. Without the Institute, there would be no dedicated professional body as an alternative to the accountancy bodies as required by the Academy's financial handbook. There would be no sector-endorsed national professional standards. And remember, this was a practitioner-led initiative coordinated by the Institute. There would be no recognised professional tiers culminating in fellowship. There would be no dedicated SBP professional institute, by the way, the first of its kind in the world. There would be no SBP apprenticeship pathways. There would be no APEL route offering experienced practitioners an opportunity to achieve a degree level qualification. There would be no alternative to a full accountancy qualification in the form of the CFO, COO Level 7 programme for aspiring FDs and Chief Operating Officers. There would be no SBP National Qualifications Board with oversight of all related CPD programmes, curriculum content, quality assurance and accreditation. There would be no dedicated SBP organisation represented on government consultation panels or working groups. There may well be no minimum per pupil funding for primary and secondary. And whilst it's a bold statement, we believe ISBL's technical representations to ministers were the tipping point for making that decision. There may well have been no reduction in national funding formula factors, And over the years, our work with officials and other stakeholders has resulted in the over 100 formula factors being rationalised into 15 simple and more transparent elements. The qualified accountant requirement for all CFOs would still feature in the Academy's financial handbook had we not made the case to extend suitability of those performing the CFO function to include SBPs with appropriate business management and finance qualifications. There would be no SBP representation on Schools Forum. Again, we made strong representations to amend the guidance to include SBPs as credible School Forum representatives. The joint letter signed by the General Secretaries of the unions, the Chief Executive of CST and the Chief Executive of the National Governance Association to encourage school leaders to ensure school business leaders always sit on the SLT. Had the Institute not intervened, it is likely that the SRMA initiative would have been heavily dominated by audit firms. And without the Institute, the SBP community would be significantly underrepresented at national events. We would not have a main stage or plenary presence at the school and academy show, and we would have very limited influence over the content of national events. But it's important to understand that our ability to influence national policy depends on the strength of our membership. Put simply, a national union with tens of thousands of members will always have the ear of the Secretary of State before local groups and indeed national membership organisations with just a few thousand members. However, if all those involved in school business leadership were represented by a single national entity, our reach and influence would be absolutely enormous. To be clear, as an organisation, we enjoy membership of circa 30% of all the SBPs on the school census, and our sustainability and business model doesn't really depend on that number increasing. However, with a greater percentage of the overall SBP community, we could do so much more. So if there are important barriers to you or your networks gaining access to the Institute, we'd really like to know about it. And if price is the issue, again, please tell us. Support this message by retweeting or liking, not because you like or dislike what we are saying, but because you believe SBPs deserve a seat at the top table with policymakers. Not just sometimes, but absolutely every time. Our campaign is straightforward. SBPs really need to be heard. Beyond the Institute, there's no other dedicated SBP organisation in the room or on the phone with ministers during this crisis. And we're there, we are there. We feed into the education arm of what we believe are some of the COBRA conversations, but we want even greater access to put forward your concerns, your ideas, and your solutions. This is really not a time to be working against each other. It's so important that as a professional community, we coalesce around some broad principles. Mutual professional respect, accepting we don't have all the answers on our own, but collectively perhaps we do. Collaboration, helping each other share the burden. And that sense of community, making sure we look out for each other during the various phases of this pandemic. As a professional community, let's make sure we work in absolute harmony, respecting each other's limitations and our strengths at both a national and a regional level. Thank you so much for listening. You're doing an incredible job. I have to applaud your resolve and your resilience during this very difficult time. I'm now going to hand you over to our Chair of Trustees, Matthew Clements-Wheeler, who's going to talk a little bit more about the work that we're doing. Thank you.
Stephen, I reiterate on behalf of the board and the whole organisation what Stephen said. The whole raison d'etre for the Institute is that we want to see school business professionals making a difference. We want to see you having the greatest possible positive impact on outcomes for children in the country's education system. And that's both in the short term and the longer term. As Stephen said, right now, our members and members of the wider profession are working flat out. And we know things out there are tough and they are very uncertain. And you're all working really hard. Yeah, and maybe at this point, Stephen and I effectively want to stand on our digital doorstep and applaud every single one of you. The way that you're working, as Stephen said, to reconfigure your schools and business operations, to deliver a semblance of education and normal services in a very difficult circumstance. Frankly, that's amazing. You are amazing. But the board and the institute also want the profession to play its part in the long term, to do all of the things that Stephen's listed, and we want to champion the best aspects of the profession. And this means sometimes that we as an institute will be speaking on behalf of the profession, at other times we will be speaking directly to it. Our job is to understand what works and to share it with the right audiences at the right time. Of course, to do this, we have to listen. And we work hard at listening to our members, to local groups, to the people that employ school business professionals, the local authorities, the governing bodies, the multi-academy trusts. We also listen to our teaching colleagues about the support that our profession needs to provide to them. The Institute undertakes research, and of course we spend, it won't surprise you, a whole load of time following Twitter conversations and in dialogue with our members. We talk at length to the government as frequently and as often as they will listen to us. We don't grandstand, that's not our style. We don't seek regular headlines or to grab coverage on the TV and the radio. We seek to understand the issues that you face, how you deal with them, and if we can help you more by meeting your training needs. We want to help you to be even more effective in your role and to give you a sense of pride in belonging to the only national professional institute for school business leaders. As I reflect on this current crisis, am I worried about the profession? Well, yes. I am worried about the mental health of our members and the wider profession. The burdens on you are enormous at the moment. I think if anyone were to say the word vouchers to you again, you would probably lose the plot. Am I worried about the capability of my colleagues in the profession? Absolutely not. The sterling work that you are doing in schools at the moment is testimony to that. To borrow a phrase from one of my favorite school business leaders, you've got this. But just imagine looking to the future and looking beyond this current crisis if all of those involved in school business leadership collaborated together under the banner of that single national entity. As Stephen said, our reach and influence would be unstoppable. Together, we would have more members than either of the two head teacher and school business manager unions. They are our partners and we work with them. We never seek to supplant them or replace them, but we do have a particular technical voice which we think needs to be heard. So support this message, as Stephen said. Like it, tweet the link to the video, share it with your colleagues, because whether you like or dislike what we're saying, school business practitioners deserve a seat at the table, and there is strength in numbers. Our campaign is straightforward. We do believe your voice needs to be heard. We believe we are the right vehicle for helping it to be heard and for getting the answers to technical queries at times like this, but also for moving the profession and your schools forwards. The Institute of School Business Leadership is only as strong as its members. I believe in you. I believe in your practice. Join us, and together we will be stronger.